Transmitting youth empowerment and we are here to help Kenyan youth, whether in college, employment, business or agriculture, realize your dreams by providing the tools and knowledge you need to grow your income. This will be through youth forums, a series of free weekly online webinars on Zoom and other social media platforms. Some exciting topics covered will include financial planning, budgeting, investing, taxation, capital markets, and much more. This week, please to have Elisha Ojwang, a financial consultant from COP Consultancy, to speak about financial planning, savings and budgeting to be specific. Karibuni sana.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Sandra, for the wonderful introduction. Welcome very much those joining us on X, those joining us on YouTube, those joining us on Facebook, and of course, those joining us on Zoom. As we've been told, my name is Elisha Ojwang. I work with the COP Bank in the COP Consultancy subsidiary as a consultant there. And as we've been told today, we are focusing on financial planning with more focus on savings and budgeting. Kindly, let's work together for the next 1 hour. Let's learn, let's enjoy this, and let's make a change in our lives. Please make sure that you are comfortable where you are free to interact with us. You can actually interact in the various social medias through the comment sections, the chat sections. So don't feel restricted. This is our session. This is our day. Let's learn and let's grow together. Now, we are talking about savings and budgeting. Savings and budgeting. At the end of this session, there are some key aspects that ideally we should have achieved. There are key elements that we want to get out of this session today, saying that we've learned A, B, C. When we talk about budgeting, of course, we would want to know why is it important to budget. We would want to know why is it important to save. So understanding the importance of saving as well as the importance of budgeting. We would also want to be in a position that we can be able to generate our own budgets in our own ways to meet our specific conditions. So creating personal budgets will be one of the things that we want to be able to do by the time we are done with this lesson. In this training, again, of course, we've mentioned one of the focus areas is savings. So what are some of the saving strategies that we can use? And what are the saving vehicles or options that are available for us as the youths of this country? I'm sure we are eager to learn. And I'm sure kila mtu mwenye ako hapa anajiuliza, what's new for me today? We will be able to see what's new. Now, even as we start this, someone actually, when I was inviting them to attend this training, asked me, why are you calling us to come for the training on savings and budgeting? What am I saving? What am I budgeting? Do I have the resources? Do I have the money to budget for? Do I have the money to save? We will see whether we have that money or whether we can save and budget even when that money is not available. As we do this, we want to probably just take a minute back and do some definitions so that we work together. There are some key terms that we'll be using throughout this training, and it's good that each of us at least have a good understanding on what it means. We start at broad level, just looking at financial literacy. Financial literacy. What does financial literacy entail? What does financial literacy entail? So we'll be looking at some definition, and I'm sure as we do this, you'll be able to understand and appreciate some of the things. And just to know that you are with us and you are eager to learn, kindly, let's just chat a bit. I have a question on the screen that I would want, at least, if we are able, kindly just tell us, if today you were to receive some 10,000 Kenya shillings from whichever source, what would you do with that money? Let's chat a bit. What would you do with that money? Elfu kumi imefika kwako from whichever source. What would you do with it? Let's see some of the responses coming through. Let's see some of the responses coming through. I can see they are trickling in. I want to just sample a few. I see what they are saying. I've seen someone, Steven is saying they'll invest 60. Esther, invest in forex trading. There's Ezekiel, pay my Pepe Sacco loan, which is overdue. So at least Ezekiel anatuambia kuna ka overdue loan pahali. Put some of it on MMF. That's Lydia. MMF in this case, we take that's the money market fund. There's Kipyegon, Duncan, who is telling us that they will use their budgeting for it. So yeye amesema kwanza atafanyia budget. Larry amesema split on bills. Good. So at least from even the few that I've sampled, we can see different people will use the money differently. Not all of us will actually take the same route. We will not all take the same route in handling that money. So by the time we are done with this lesson, we want to see whether the decisions that were made by the people we've sampled their responses are actually in line with what is expected as far as financial management is concerned. And we'll narrow it down to budgeting and also to savings and see whether they are in line with that. So what is financial literacy to start with? What does it entail? Basically, when we talk about financial literacy, we are looking at an individual's ability, one, to understand pesa. Unafaa ujue ku understand pesa. And in understanding pesa, of course, money, we'll be looking at, do I know how it's made, how it's generated? How can I generate it, me as an individual? How then can I also use it? So it's understanding the money and also managing it. Understanding and managing. So there are a number of concepts that then we can look at there when it comes to understanding of money. Of course, the money itself and the aspect of cash flow. And cash flow, hapa tunaangalia tu basically how money moves. There's ile inaingia na kuna ile inatoka. So the inflows and the outflows. That will be around now what we call cash flow. we have the economic concepts, the financial concepts, issues to do with income. We'll shortly look at what is income, what is expenditure. Wengine walisema they'll invest. So what's investment? Tutaangalia hayo. And then of course, kuna mwingine alisema hata akona loan overdue ya sako, so atailipia. So debt and risk management are some elements that are looked at when we are talking about financial literacy, financial management. So some of them we will be able to cover in today's lesson, but then there are others that will be covered in subsequent lessons. It's a series that the bank is actually championing. So today just being the first one that's happening. We have more to come. Good. Why does it matter to me as a youth in this country, to you as a youth in this country? Why is it critical for you to be conversant with financial aspects? Why is it important for you to know how to understand money, to know how to manage money? All of us, the way we are currently, there's a lot of talk about the cost of living, for example. Kila kitu inakaa kama iko expensive. And of course, the youth, tunaambiwa sisi ndio majority in this country. So if there's an impact of that higher cost of living, we are actually the ones at the forefront of being affected by the cost of living. So how do we survive in such an environment? Of course, this is coupled with the rate of unemployment. Majority are actually not in very formal engagement. But still, we have to live. So the resources that we have, how do we then manage them? The little we get, how do we manage it in this environment where there's high level of unemployment? And of course, we are in a different generation where technology is also taking over. So this digital space where everything, including money, is going digital, how do we maneuver in this environment? Now, with the understanding, with going through the different trainings on financial literacy, we are able then to understand and appreciate how we can be able to do things in this kind of an environment. Let's look at some of the key concepts. Income. Inamaanisha nini income? When we talk about income, we are looking at the money that comes into our possession. Niko na kikapu yangu, and what goes into that kikapu. So I may have different sources of this money. Kuna wengine wetu tuko kwa employment. So whatever comes from employment, of course, will feed into that basket of my total income. Saa zingine tunaongea juu ya revenue, kwanza kwa wenye wako kwa biashara. So hiyo inaingia kwa kikapu. Of course, we have those who are probably not in formal employment, but kuna gigs hapa na pale. So those hustles that also give you something inaingia kwa hiyo income. And of course, we have some of us here who are students and probably don't have a formal engagement, but kuna pesa huwa unapewa kama maybe allowance, pocket money. That's what you have for yourself. That's what you can budget for. So hiyo pia iko hapo. Then of course we have, so that all that will encompass what we called the inflows. But then there are also the outflows. And one of the outflows is the expenses. So expenses ideally is now the utilization aspect of it. So we have needs that we have to meet. Rent inakungoja hapo, ushamalisha college. Food, bado you have to eat. you have to clothe yourself, you have to move around, transport. So all those aspects become expenses. Hata entertainment, hizo zote unaenda ni entertainment, hiyo bado inaingia hapo. Then of course we have the other outflow, what we'll call the savings. And savings is what we say the money set aside for future use. Ile imeingia kwa kikapu, zingine nimetumia kulipa hizi needs, but kuna ingine nimeweka kando for future use. That becomes saving. And one of the future uses is actually investing. So what is investment? Investment basically now looks at the money that is put aside or used to acquire an asset that will either give you income or appreciate in value. Inakupatia income ama ina appreciate in value. So in one of the actually sessions we'll be having in the days to come, we'll be focusing on investment. So we will again learn more as far as investment is concerned. Let's look at budgeting, and I want to again ask a question on budgeting. So on budgeting, if today I tell you to budget even that 10,000 that we talked about earlier, what determines? Kuna wenye walisema watalipa deni, wata-invest. What determines how you utilize your money? What influences your decision? We can chat. We can chat. We'll be able to see some of the comments, probably even at a later time. I'll look at them and see, and we can also see what people are saying, how they determine their usage of money. What does it mean when we talk about a budget? Tell you, you need to budget, you need to budget. So we say budget, ideally, it's the simplest form of a plan. A budget is the simplest form of a plan. So there's the money we've seen, the money that needs to come in, the inflows, and the money that goes out, the outflows. How do we budget for it? So in budgeting, ideally, we plan how do I get the money in? So how do I get the inflows to come? And once they come, how do I budget on how to utilize them? Na hapa ndio watu wanikuwa wanajiuliza, mnatuita training on budgeting and savings, so na hatuna pesa, tuna budget nini? Now, we said it's a plan. For plan, you have to plan in advance. So what am I expecting to come in? I plan for that. I expect, let's say, 10,000 from this source. I expect 5,000 from this other source. And I expect 2,000 from this other source. Now, when this money, when I get it, how do I want to utilize it? So I'm expecting to use, let's say, 2,000 on savings. I expect to use 3,000 on food. You are already budgeting. Bado haijafika, ama already imefika, but you now have to budget for how to utilize it. That's called budgeting. And why do we need to budget? What are the benefits of budgeting? Now, one of the benefits of budgeting is that it helps us actually to plan ourselves well, in a way that I don't overspend on some aspects and ignore others. When you budget, you are actually organized. It's a form of organization, individual or self-organization. That hii 10,000 ikikuja, sishtuki imeingia yote kwa food. Then I realize I don't have anything to pay for rent. So it helps you to avoid overspending in aspects that probably you would have spent less on. That's one advantage of budgeting. And of course, when you do that, hata stress inapungua. Imagine hiyo 10,000 ndio uko nayo and you are to plan and prioritize well. Because haukuwa na budget imeenda kwa chakula, then unagundua hata rent haijalipwa. The pocket money ulipewa the 10,000 kumbe ilifai last a whole semester. And umeitumia on 2 items. Now unaangaika, stress inaingia. As a student you can't focus. As the youth in employment, umeanza tu juzi pia pesa imeisha mapema, you can't focus, hakuna ya hata fare ya kuenda job sasa. So stress inaingia. And of course, if we plan well, if we budget with what we expect and what we have, then even meeting our goals inakuwa rahisi. What are some of the available options for budgeting? Different models exist out here in the market. And one of them that is championed is what we call the 50-30-20 rule, which says whatever revenue or income you have, apportion 50% of it to needs. Now needs we say ni vitu hauwezi fanya without. Lazima uishi, lazima ukule, lazima ulale, lazima uvae. Na hata pengine kama uko na job lazima ufike hiyo job. So you have to budget for that. So at least 50% allocate for those ones. Then kuna hizi mahitaji zingine si za lazima, but you still have to do them because you are living. So we call them wants. You can do without them, but they are necessary, but not mandatory. Hizo tunaita want. Hiyo simu kubwa unahitaji. Maybe it's good for image and everything, but if it's about calling, pengine hata kabambe was enough for you. So at some point there's the basic need, and then now there are wants. And of course, inasema we don't utilize everything. Set aside at least 20% for saving. So that's what the 50-30 rule goes about. Of course, when you go into details, for example, when we talk about food, si kila kitu ni need. There's the basic food that you need to survive, but kuna ile ingine which we can term at probably now the extra for entertainment purpose. So the food to survive, but kuna ile tu ya kujivinjari, kukula nyama choma hapa na pale once in a while. You can survive without the nyama choma, but occasionally you may want to go out for it, so that becomes a want. 50-30-20 rule. Now, there are other methods. One of them, the traditional one, especially for those who are handling cash a lot, was called the envelope system. So ile pesa uko nayo in cash unaweka kwa different envelopes. Hii envelope ni ya rent, hii envelope ni ya chakula, hii envelope ni ya transport. And you don't touch another envelope. So ya chakula ikiisha usinyemelee ya rent. Unaacha ya rent hapo. So you have to be disciplined to follow through with this kind of budgeting. Of course, there are others. One of them is called the 70-20-10 rule. This is another version of the 50-30-21. Now, this appreciates that the needs probably might need more in terms of allocation, because again, one of the things we mentioned is the high cost of living. So they argue that 50% might not be enough. So at least you can work with 70. Then once they chukue 20% of whatever you have, but still you must leave something for savings. So wanasema at least 10% iende kwa savings. Kuna hii ingine inaitwa pay yourself first as a budgeting method. Pay yourself first. Now, we have to be very careful. When they say pay yourself first, si kujibonda. Not going out there now to kurudishia mwili shukrani. No. Pay yourself here is looked at in the angle of save first. Ukisha save, then hii imebaki, now you can do budget for the needs, the wants. But first of all, allocate the saving component. So The disadvantage is that this method doesn't provide you with a specific proportion or percentage of what you can put aside. So it's at your discretion. Ni wewe uamue hii itaingia kwa saving, then hii imebaki nitumie kwa matumizi mengine. But the key thing, there must be something for saving. Then of course we have proportional budgeting approach, which is almost similar to the 50-30-20 or the 70-20-10. So it still also advocates for allocating on the different expense lines, weka ka allocation. Kila line ikuwe na allocation yake. And then, of course, you strictly follow those allocations. So, as to the percentage that you should apply, it will be determined by your goals and the priorities that you have as an individual. But it says, at least let there be allocation for the different items. Then, of course, we have the other approach. They call it the 60-40 budgeting rule. So 60 goes to the needs, and then the 40 to now be shared among the savings, the want, and everything. So that's another approach. One key thing that is coming out in all these methods is the element of allocating some resource to the different aspects that need to be done. So one, you must already be knowing, what do I spend on? You must already be knowing which are my sources of revenue. So I will document pesa zangu zinatoka wapi and how much do I expect, and then how do I intend to use it. So then una document vizuri how you want to use it mpaka mwisho. So probably we can look at an example of a budget. How does it look like? So this is an example of a budget. So we have the income side. I have my budget. So in my budget, this is it has started by looking at I want to look at this one first, the income side. So on the income side, what do we have here? For this individual, they are having some element of salary or wages. At least they are expecting at 20,000 kutoka where they are engaged normally. Hakona kabiashara pia kando, which is giving them 10,000. And there's an investment they had done. Unakumbuka one of us alituambia kuna sako loan analipa. So kuna ka investment alifanya pahali na ana expect ka dividend kutoka huko ama interest. And they are estimating hiyo itakuja kama 4,000. So overall they are expecting within that month of January 2026 wapate kitu kama 34,000. And that's the expectation. Now that's the budget. By the end of January, assuming sasa tumefika mwisho wa January, this is the actual wamepata wages ama salary imekuja vile walikuwa wanatarajia, the whole 20k. But kuna business income, biashara haikuenda vile. So instead of 10,000 wamepata ngapi? 7,250. So hapo hawakupata ile walikuwa wanatarajia. Interest ama zile dividends sako pia haikufanya vile. So rather than getting 4,000 they were expecting, amepata 2,000. So instead of 34k, waka end up na 29,250. Now, at the point of budgeting, they had budgeted for the 34,000. Let's see how they budgeted for it. And now with the actual being 29, now are they going to allocate it? So on the budgeting bit, they had budget for needs. We want to see how that happened. Budgeting for needs. So the rent, they had some amount, electricity, some amount they had budgeted for all the way to hata salon. Ile ya kuenda kwa kinyozi ama kwa salon. And when the money came, we can see how this individual had to now make adjustments. They had their budget, so they are the mandatory elements that they can't change anything on. So those ones are remaining the way they were. but then kuna some areas they can make adjustments. Luckily water bill haikuja kubwa. Instead of 1,000 that they had budgeted for, bill ikikuja ilikuwa 2,850, so at least wakasave hapo. Lakini kwa grocery, chakula, bei iliongezeka mpaka wakajipata wametumia 6,000 instead of 4,000. So fare, kuna siku alipewa lift, so hakujitumia pesa zake, so they ended up using 2,500. Because of the savings that they have made, life insurance wakasema, wacha tuongeze kakitu huko, so they paid 1,200. Of course salon hiyo ilienda tu vile walipanga. So this is someone's budget and how they budgeted and how they utilized it. They are able to track. The same with wants. Concerts, either kuenda mahappy and the likes. Dining out, donation ama gifts. Because pia hutaki kukua stringent sana. Kuna relatives wanakutegea. So whatever you get, whatever you make, they still need to at least be supported. But we don't need to support blindly. The beauty of planning is that you know the much you can afford to donate or to give out in support. So this individual, for example, budgeted that, Edum wakaweka 3,000. But now because of the money they were expecting haikukuja vile walitarajia, they had to limit how much they spend on that area. So rather than 3,000, they could only give out 1,500. Of course, with discipline, mtu akikuja tomorrow akuulize umsaidie nayo, and you had already exhausted what you allocated. In this case, you have adjusted now. Only 1,500 I can afford to give. Hiyo float imeisha. Hakuna tena kunyemelea item ingine. So hapo utasema tu sasa imeisha. Wacha pengine tutarajie next month ama next week, depending on how you get your inflows. Discipline. Good. So we have the expenses on that, and of course the savings too. So this one has emergency fund somewhere, because we say cash is king. Cash is king. Emergency kitokea, you need something you can run to and pull out haraka. So that's what they've done. And of course we've seen they've done some investment kwa money markets and the like. So that is a simple form of a budget. At times we've talked of the rules, and for example, the 50-30-20 rule. It gives you the percentage at a very high level. Now, you need to probably go deeper into understanding how do I distribute, for example, the 50% among the different needs. This is heavily informed by now the priorities. What is a priority to you? What is a priority to you? But some of the proportions that have been put out there in the market has this table that we were seeing here. Where I'm saying now, like that 50%, when it comes to housing, ile pesa unatumia kwa housing, and kwa housing ni rent, kama ni mortgage unalipa iko hapo ndani, kama ushaanza kulipia mortgage, but kama ni rent unalipa isikule kupita 30% of what you've allocated to that float, the 50%. Food and groceries isipite 15%. Transportation unasema isipite 10%. Utilities ni kama bills za maji, bills za stima, again zisipite 10%. The insurance and the health component isipite 5%. So make sure that you don't overdo one side. Ninatengeneza 30,000 na ninaishi kwa nyumba ya 15 or 20,000. Utakuwa umeumiza the other items. So balancing. That's on budgeting. Kindly we keep chatting. If you have other sentiments or questions, you can pack them. We'll be having a session briefly for questions towards the end. Let's look at the aspect of saving. And for saving, allow me to take us through this graph. This graph basically depicts our life cycle. Maisha yetu hapa duniani kama binadamu. There's a time when we are young. There's a time when we are in our youth. There's a time when we now in our adulthood, uzazi. There's a time that age catches up with us, the old age. So within all those stages, there's what we call the commitment and the income that probably comes with it. So how do we balance the commitments and the revenue or the income that come at any given time? How do we balance all that? We understand in our utotoni, probably tulikuwa tunapewa kila kitu. So we are not incurring any expenses on our own. Ilikuwa mzigo ya mzazi ama guardian. And then a time comes when we have now to meet that cost. By the time you are done with college, now responsibilities inaanza kuingia. So in our graph, we see the red line and the green line. So the red line is the commitments, responsibilities. The green line ni ile income huwa tunapata. Chances are that probably in your youth, you might end up making extra than the commitment. Of course, times ziko difficult. Saa zingine tunapata hata kwa youth huku, commitments zishakuwa mingi kushinda nini? Income. But if we get some income now in that stage, chances are that it might be higher than the commitments. So, but a time is coming, adulthood, tutapatana na wapendwa wetu, tuanze familia, and within no time, watoto ndio hao pia wameingia, commitments inaingia. And chances are, those commitments might be higher than what we are making. Hapo ndio tunaona red line ishapita, the green line. And then of course, there's time now, in family we call the empty nest stage. Watoto wanatoka, mnabaki tu wewe na your spouse, the better half. Watoto wakianza kujitegemea, so commitments inaanza kupungua. But at that stage, income pia chances are zinaanza kupungua. Because energy inaisha. So inarudi chini, retirement is knocking within no time, you've retired. And at retirement now, because of uzee, magonjwa, those hizo za wazee mpaka mtu ajui ni nini haswa inamfanya zinaingia ndani. So commitments bado ziko kama hizo za hospitali na kadhalika. But because hakuna energy ya kufanya kazi zaidi, chances are the income sasa iko chini, the green line. Now, this journey that we are taking, the financial literacy journey, is ideally to help us to maneuver through those different stages. That at the end of it all, how can we make sure that our green line stays above the red line at every stage in our life? At every stage in our life. How do we make sure that we stay above? So, if there's anything we have to take out of all the trainings that will be happening, will be how to make sure the green line remains above the red line at every stage of our life. The truth is, a number of things, as we've seen from that graph, keep changing. And one of the things that we've seen as changing is our health graph. That with uzeeni, hata the condition of our health inapungua. The other thing that we've seen as changing is the income. That as we keep living, chances are if we don't do something radical today when we still have the energy, income itapungua. Expenses, of course, zitapungua, pia zitapungua, but chances are that the rate at which they inapungua might not be at the same rate the income inapungua. Income inapungua haraka kushinda the expenses, unless we do something different today when we still have the energy. Even our looks. Leo tuko warembo, very handsome gentlemen, but with time, hata hiyo pia urembo unaenda. So we have to be very careful how we manage all this. And that's what we'll be looking at in this journey. So why do we save? We've seen one of the reasons we save is for emergencies. We save also to enable investments. The money we put aside, that's actually the money that we use for other investments. The other reasons we save is to accumulate funds that can actually be utilized by others. When you put your money in a bank, for example, that's the money someone else borrows. I know for those who have loans, that money you have as a loan is a saving by someone else. So it accumulates resources that can be used to lend to others, and we develop as a people. It is also a means of accumulating wealth. We've seen that with the savings, we are able to invest, and with investments, we create wealth. So, there are a number of things that usually happen. We have challenges when it comes to doing different things. Ngine wanasema, this year is 2026. I'm hitting the gym. But then 2 weeks down the line, tumeanza kuweka bat. This year, lazima nifanye ABCD. Kidogo kidogo, but the same goes even for how we behave when it comes to saving. That we want to save, but zinaingia. So we say the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. But we have to overcome that challenge. We have to overcome that challenge. And it starts with you as the individual. So some of the few truths about saving culture. One, saving and discipline are two things that you can't separate. Allow me to tell you a brief story about a friend of mine who got an employment akitoka tu college after kuhustle for like 2 months, akapata kazi italikuwa inamlipa 15,000. And at that very moment akakutana na mtu wa insurance, akamconvince kwamba ninaweza kukuuzia education policy. Of course at first akashindwa, sasa education policy na mimi sina hata mtoto, sijafikiria hata kuoa. But he was convinced that even if it's not for that mtoto whom I don't have, wacha tu niweke kakitu hapa kidogo for saving purpose. So he knew that with the saving atakuwa anaweka standing order. Remember we said discipline. So akaweka standing order, inakuwa inachukua every time. And with that money, 6 years down the line, alioa. 8 years down the line, alikuwa na familia. And with that familia, now the money he had invested in the education plan, ikaanza kutumika. He had taken a 9-year plan. So by the time it matured, of course, waka-invest tena kidogo. By the time mtoto anaanza shule, akona ka stock ya pesa pahali. Stress inapungua. Making a decision, si lazima ungoje useme nitafanya kesho. Kesho inaanzia leo. Savings and greed don't mix. Usikule kila kitu. And we say saving culture takes time to develop. We say practice makes perfect. If your practice is eating everything umepata, kama ni pocket money umepewa, imeenda yote. Pesa umetengeneza kidogo, imeenda yote. That's where you become perfect. So ukisema hata unangoja ukue na mamilioni, kama ulizoea kukula hata milioni utakula yote. So save. Practice makes perfect, however little you do. Saving culture is purpose driven. Lazima uwe na goals. Why exactly am I saving? What is my ultimate plan? What do I want to achieve at the end of it all? Some of the excuses we usually make, I don't earn enough. Anza tu na hiyo kidogo uko nayo. Anza na hiyo. I have too much debt. Hakuna pesa inabaki ya kulipia. Of course, it's good to pay debt, but make sure that you do what? You still set aside kidogo ya kusave. Wengine, I'll save later when my salary is higher. Wengine, saving interest rates are too low, kwa nini niweke pesa huko? Remember, bado kuna emergencies. So ukiweka pesa zako penye huwezi toa haraka, utakuwa umejifunga. So you must have some cash flow for emergencies. That's why it's good to save. So don't wait. Time to start is now. And some of the options we have are, of course, the banks. Banks have bank accounts that you can use to save. Tembea tu kwa bank, gonga tu hapo kwa mtu wa branch hapo, atakusaidia. Digital apps ziko siku hizi, we can save there. SACCOs ziko, tumeona hata wengine hapa tuko huko ndani already. The money market funds tuliona wengine tuko hapo. Hata chamas ziko. So we must be able to do all that we need. Some of the key success factors when it comes to saving and budgeting, even as we are closing this session, one of them is, we've mentioned discipline, discipline, discipline. Be disciplined. Learn to say no to unnecessary what? Spending. Spend tu kwa sababu pesa iko. Plan yourself. Clear financial goals. Angalau uwe na kagol pahali, what you want to achieve, and save for it. Of course, track every shilling. Usiache kwamba pesa imeenda unasema tu, I know ilitumika vizuri, but you can't account for what you used it for. And we say, start small, stay consistent. Consistency is the key. Haijalishi, amount might not, depending on how much you have, but consistency when it comes to saving. Anza tu. And of course, avoid lifestyle inflations. Kwamba leo pesa imeongezeka, sasa ni wakati wa kuenda kujivinjari. Ile tulisema kurudishia mwili shukrani. No. Control yourself. Usikule kila kitu kwa sababu tu imeongezwa. And then, of course, we say we are living in a digital world. We have too much information available for us. We have different platforms. Let's use those platforms. Make use of them. The phones have apps and everything that can help in budgeting, can help in saving. Let's make use of them. Emergency fund first, investment later. Tumesema finance, cash flow is king. Pesa. Lazima uwe na ile unaweza pata kwa emergency. And of course, let's continuously learn. Lessons kama hizi tunapitia saa hizi, they don't get old. Huwezi sema sasa wewe umefikia mwisho. Continue encouraging yourself, continue learning more and more about money, about savings, about budgeting, about investing. Anything about financial literacy is good. And finally, to conclude, let's remember this. Budgeting and saving ideally are not meant to limit how you want to live. They are not meant to limit you enjoying life. They just want to help you to gain more from what you are making now and to even make tomorrow better. Creating opportunity for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave you with this quote from one author called Michelle. Alisema, think twice about spending money you don't have. Because we usually say, pesa ni kidogo, so ile uko nayo, think twice on spending money you don't have, on things you don't need. And why are you doing it? To impress people you don't even like. So, tusiishie maisha yetu juu ya watu wengine. Kwa sababu niliona Onyi akifanya hivi na hivi, I also want to be like Onyi. If I'm Njoki, I have my goals as Njoki. Let me pursue my goals. Let Onyi pursue his goals too. Let's not live our lives for other people. Let's plan our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to open it up briefly for some questions, 1 or 2 or 3. Of course, you are free to even put extra questions on our chat, on our walls. We'll be able to interact with them even after this session. Maybe we can pick 1 or 2 questions. We see what's coming through. Let me see if I can see any question. So I've seen actually there's Steven who was asking, what is the best money market fund platform? What is the best money market fund platform? So Steven, and where anyone else interested in, again, investment and different platforms that we can use to invest. Now, we have a specific training dedicated again for investment coming up actually in the coming weeks, starting with Friday next week. So kindly make sure that you are in so that we can learn more about now these options, about the money market funds. But one thing we know is that even in Coop Bank, if you walk into any of the branches, you'll actually be told about our Coop Money Market Fund, where you can start with. So more in, again, as far as investment is concerned, in subsequent trainings. Let me see if there's someone. So Tony Osedo, I can see Tony Osedo was asking something. In case I'm saving in one account, just a moment. I keep to be losing this one of Tony. I seem to have lost that one of Tony. I'm trying to trace it. Good, but we'll look at it later and probably respond to it even on the chat. Felix Kibet is asking, in your view, which one is better when it comes to saving, money market fund, or SACCOs? Explain. Now, the key thing, we might not say one is better than the other, but remember what we said. One of the key things that determines which one is better is looking at your long and short-term goals as an individual. What exactly are you saving for? What do you want to achieve? And with that in mind, then you can look at the different vehicles available. Which one will actually help you meet that objective faster? So someone will opt for a SACCO, another person will opt for money market, and another person probably will opt for a bank account. So the different vehicles available, depending on the objective one is pursuing at any given time. So if I need emergency fund, for example, I know that emergency fund is not what I will put in the SACCO. Because SACCO, ukiingia, you only get your money back when you are exiting. But within that period, of course, you are able to access loans easily to do other things. You are able even to do what? To get the dividends and the interest. So if I'm saving for long term, where I need big loans, for example, to do my things, then I will opt for that. But if I'm saving for emergency, then I would probably talk bank account, I will talk money market, where I can access the money faster. So those are some of now what we say, what are your goals? Why exactly are you making the savings? From YouTube, we can see Brianna is asking, does Coop Bank have good plan on saving? And the answer is yes. Of course, as Coop Bank, there are different saving plans, different saving accounts that we are able to access as customers. So if you walk into any of the Co-op Bank accounts, if you call our customer lines, if you interact with us on our social media handles, you'll still be able to be guided on the available options for you to take from. So yes, they are available. Meshach, is it possible for you to share the slides presentation for future reference? Again, yes, the materials will be available, even this training itself. If you still want to go through it, you can still access the material from our social media handles, the training, our YouTube platform. You can always play it back and still listen to it. And of course, we are sure it will help you greatly. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, I know the questions are quite many, and I'm looking at, let me just see whether we can take one more. Kindly, anyone here with intense knowledge in the shares market, kindly insist now. Marvin, you are a good candidate for next training. So Friday next week, kindly make sure that you tune in, because the investment vehicles will be actually some of the discussions that will be happening, how you can grow your wealth. Is this the one that, yeah, I think this is the one that disappeared from Tony Osedo. In case I'm saving in one account, how can I split it even into 4 different sides to trace other allocations? In case I'm saving in one account, how can I split it even into 4 different sides to trace other allocations? Now, the account basically will be like what we were saying, your basket. So the funds, the money you make come into your basket. Now, your basket in this case is now the saving account that you have. But in the background, you know I have 20,000 in that account. And that 20,000, I can budget for it. And the budgeting is something that you can do as simple as just having the Excel template. So if you are computer savvy, you know how to use Excel, just do a simple Excel like what we showed in the presentation, where this is the much I have and this is how I intend to use it. So that whatever is in that account, if I've utilized, let's say the rent was to take 10,000, if our food was to take 5,000, once I use the 5,000, I know the food docket is done. I don't go back to it. So anytime I want to access that money, I must only go back to what? I must only look for other extra money from elsewhere. But whatever remains in that account, I know ingine ni ya rent, so siwezi guza, ingine ni ya transport. But even in the accounts nowadays, what happens, there are options. We have even wallets. So you can even move, you have your account, but you are given like your wallet and the like. So it's a mobile wallet. You can operate it from your app. You can move money from this account, put in the wallet, lock in some other account within. So there are available options that the banks, for example, are giving, and we can utilize those ones. And based on the question that Tony has asked, I think it's very critical that we know that with technology, the fact that I can access my money kwa mkono, we have to be very careful that we are disciplined. Otherwise, chances of not following the budget are quite high, as opposed to traditionally when I had to move to a bank to go and withdraw cash so I could control myself, because going to a bank was difficult. Sahi penye huku, hata hapo penye uko kwa sherehe, you can still access that money. So discipline becomes very key. That nikisha, hata mpesa nikiona kwa app bado yuko kwa account, I don't touch it for a purpose which was not meant for it. I think I saw there was another one from Collins. Does Cooperative Bank provide services for investing in Kenya's NSE market? Stock brokerage, that is. And the answer is yes. Of course, we have within the Co-op Bank group, we have Kingdom Securities that is purely focusing on share trading. So again, if you walk into any of our branches or even if you contact us through the social media platforms, you'll still be assisted and guided accordingly to get in touch with Kingdom Securities, or you can even invest in those ones through another subsidiary called Co-operative Investment, again within the bank. So options are available for us, ladies and gentlemen. We can take advantage of them. I know more questions are still on the platform. We'll still try to interact with them and respond to them even after this training. Allow me at this juncture to say thank you very much for listening to us. I'm sure someone has picked something that they can, you can support them in their everyday life. So as we come to the end of the training, I want to thank you very much for listening, for logging in, and also for being just here today. Remember, I'm just trying to see, there was a comment popping up here that I want to... Good, so I think I'll put it on hold so that it doesn't interrupt. We have our contact details up there, so kindly make sure that you can still keep in touch with us. You can do interactions through our social media platforms, and remember what we've learned today: start small, continue growing, and of course, we'll be able to learn from it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Those who are on YouTube, asanteni sana for logging in. X, thank you very much for listening in. Zoom, asanteni sana for being here. And even Facebook, may God bless you. Let's grow as youths of Kenya. Na Mungu atubariki. Allow me to take it back to Sandra.
Thank you for joining us on this week's webinar. Next week we will cover financial planning for the future and wealth creation. Join the conversation and send us an email at webinar@copbank.co.ke and we'll give you the plan. Remember, by sending us your email, you consent to receiving future communication from us. Let's go. Let's grow.